It was a quiet Thursday evening when Daniel Blake, a successful CEO known for his sharp business mind and no-nonsense approach, walked into Harper's Diner. On the surface, he was just another customer in a faded leather jacket, worn jeans, and a cap pulled low. Nobody knew that behind the casual clothes was a man who ran a multi-million-dollar hospitality empire. He was there undercover, not for publicity, but to truly understand what it was like on the ground, how his own restaurants functioned when no one knew the boss was watching. The diner wasn't part of his chain, but Daniel had a habit of learning from every business he visited. He ordered a simple meal, soup, salad, and fresh bread, and settled into a corner booth where he could observe the staff. That's when his eyes fell on a young waitress moving quickly between tables, a tired yet determined look in her eyes. Her name tag read, Clara. She had a warm smile for every customer, but there was something in the way she clutched her order pad, tight, almost like it was her anchor in a storm. For the next hour, Daniel watched her. She didn't just take orders, she listened. She laughed with an elderly couple celebrating their anniversary, knelt to speak kindly to a little boy spilling juice, and even offered her own scarf to a shivering homeless man sitting outside with a cup of coffee. There was something magnetic about her kindness, genuine, effortless, and uncalculated. As the night wound down and customers began to leave, Daniel stayed behind under the pretense of enjoying his coffee. That's when he noticed something unusual. Clara slipped behind the counter, glanced around nervously, and quietly placed a half-full breadbasket into her bag. She did it quickly, like someone who had done it before but still feared being caught. Daniel's instinct as a businessman told him this was theft. His instinct as a human told him there was more to the story. He decided to follow her discreetly after she clocked out. Clara walked briskly down dimly lit streets until she reached a small apartment building. But she didn't go inside. Instead, she turned into the alley beside it, where a group of children were sitting on a worn blanket, their eyes lighting up as she pulled the bread from her bag. They rushed to her, hugging her before tearing into the bread with gratitude that broke Daniel's heart. She wasn't stealing to sell. She wasn't taking food for herself. She was feeding children, kids who looked far too thin, their clothes a size too small and worn at the edges. Daniel waited until she left, then approached her just as she was locking the door to her apartment. She froze when she saw him, fear flashing in her eyes. I'm sorry if you followed me, she said quickly. I know it's wrong to take food, but they haven't eaten a proper meal in days. I don't make enough to help them otherwise. Her voice trembled, but there was no shame, only desperation. Instead of scolding her, Daniel asked her to sit with him on the steps. Over the next hour, she told him her story. Clara had once been a promising college student studying social work. But life took a cruel turn when her parents passed away in a car accident, leaving her as the guardian of her younger brother and his friends, children from struggling families in her neighborhood. She dropped out of school to work full-time, juggling multiple jobs just to keep food on the table. Even then, it was never enough. The bread she took each night was the only way to ensure they didn't go to bed hungry. Daniel was silent for a long time, feeling a mix of admiration and guilt. Here he was, a man with more than enough resources, while someone like Clara fought daily battles just to survive. And yet, she did it with kindness, dignity, and without asking for anything in return. The next day, Daniel returned to the diner, not as the scruffy stranger, but as himself. When Clara saw him walk in wearing a tailored suit, her eyes widened. He explained who he was and what he had witnessed. She braced herself for the worst, but instead, he made an offer that left her speechless. He wanted her to work for his company, not as a waitress, but in community outreach, a department he felt needed someone with genuine compassion and a true understanding of struggle. The position came with a generous salary, benefits, and the flexibility she needed to continue caring for the children. Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. Why me? You could hire someone with a degree, someone more qualified. Daniel smiled. Degrees can teach skills. Life teaches heart, and you have the kind of heart that can't be bought or trained. In the weeks that followed, Clara transitioned into her new role. She didn't just do her job, she transformed it. She started programs to provide leftover food from Daniel's restaurants to shelters and low-income families. She partnered with local schools to ensure children received meals over weekends and holidays. Every initiative she launched was rooted in her own experiences, and the results were staggering. Daniel found himself working closely with her, and the more time they spent together, the more he admired her, not just for her dedication but for the quiet strength she carried. She had endured more than most, yet she radiated warmth and hope. It was during a late-night planning session, surrounded by coffee cups and paperwork, that Daniel realized something had changed. This wasn't just admiration anymore. It was something deeper, something he hadn't felt in years. Clara, too, found herself drawn to him, not because of his wealth or status, but because he had seen her at her lowest and instead of judging her, he had lifted her up. He had believed in her when she had nothing to offer but her truth. Months later, on a crisp autumn evening, Daniel invited Clara to a small gathering at one of his newest restaurants. But when she arrived, she found the entire place lit with candles, the tables cleared except for one in the center. There was no crowd, just Daniel, waiting with a nervous smile. "I used to think success was about numbers," he told her. "Profits, growth, expansion. But then I met you, and you reminded me that real success is measured by the lives we touch. You've touched mine more than I can ever explain. Clara, I don't just want you in my company. I want you in my life." It wasn't a grand, public proposal, just two people who had found each other in the most unexpected of ways, choosing to move forward together. Clara said yes, not because he was a CEO, but because he had shown her that even the most powerful people can be humble, and even the most broken moments can lead to something beautiful. From that night on, they weren't just building programs to help others, they were building a life together, rooted in compassion, trust, and love born from one small act of kindness. And for Daniel, the lesson was clear. Sometimes the greatest treasures are found not in boardrooms or bank accounts, but in the quiet corners of life, where someone like Clara is feeding hungry children with bread she can't afford to give. Their story became an inspiration within the company, a reminder that beneath every uniform, every name tag, and every tired smile, there is a story worth hearing. And sometimes, if you're willing to listen, you just might find that the person you least expect will change your life forever.